I never thought I'd be the kind of person who ends up in one of those wild, my life turned upside down stories. I used to laugh when I'd read posts on Reddit about people whose lives fell apart and somehow came together even better. But that's exactly what happened to me. I still can't decide if it was fate or just the ugliest heartbreak leading me straight to the best thing that ever happened to me. 3 years ago, I was engaged to a man named Tyler. We'd been together for almost 6 years since college. He wasn't perfect, but I thought he was my person. We had that typical met in a class, stayed up all night talking kind of start. He was funny, ambitious, and had this energy that drew people in. I supported him through grad school, worked 2 jobs while he finished his MBA, and when he proposed, it felt like my sacrifices were finally worth something. He told me he couldn't have done it without me, that I was his rock. I believed him. I built my future around that belief. We moved to the city after he got a job at a big finance firm. I worked as a project coordinator at a mid-sized marketing company. Nothing glamorous, but it paid decently, and I liked my team. Tyler's hours were long, and I convinced myself it was normal. Everyone in finance works late, right? I'd cook dinner, leave it on the counter, and he'd come home past midnight saying he had client meetings or reports. About 8 months before the wedding, I started feeling something was off. He was distant, always on his phone, and sometimes defensive when I asked simple questions. Once, he snapped at me for asking who he was texting. I brushed it off because I didn't want to be that fiancé. I trusted him. Or, at least I thought I did. The night everything fell apart was one of those evenings I'll never forget. I'd stayed late at work because we were preparing a big pitch for a new client. My boss, Ethan, the CEO, had been hands-on with the project and insisted on ordering pizza for everyone since we'd be there late. Around 9 p.m., I realized I'd left my laptop charger at home and decided to run back to grab it while the team took a short break. When I got to our apartment, I noticed Tyler's car in the lot. That was weird. He'd told me he was working overnight. I walked in quietly because I thought maybe he'd surprise me. The lights were dim, music was playing, and I could hear laughter from the bedroom. My heart dropped before I even opened the door. I still remember my hand trembling on the knob, hoping maybe I was wrong, that there was some explanation. But there wasn't. He was in bed with one of his coworkers. I froze. He jumped up like he'd seen a ghost, stammering excuses that didn't even make sense. "It's not what it looks like," he said, while she scrambled to grab her clothes. I couldn't even speak. I just stood there, numb, watching the man I was supposed to marry try to cover himself with lies. Eventually, I just said, "You don't get to explain this. You did this." Then I walked out. I didn't cry at first. I drove back to work, sat in my car in the parking garage, and stared at the steering wheel. I must have sat there for an hour before Ethan came down looking for me. He said the team was worried I hadn't come back. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I broke down and told him everything. I remember his face. He wasn't just sympathetic, he looked angry for me. He offered to call me a car and told me to take the week off. I didn't want to go home, so I stayed at a hotel that night, still in my work clothes, staring at the ceiling, wondering how my life just shattered in a few minutes. The next few weeks were hell. Tyler tried to reach out, showed up at my door, sent flowers, texts, even got his mom to call me. He said it was a mistake, that he was drunk, that it didn't mean anything. But I couldn't unsee what I saw. Every memory we had felt like a lie after that. I blocked him eventually. I thought I'd never trust anyone again. When I went back to work, Ethan pulled me aside. He told me I didn't have to talk about it, but he wanted to make sure I was okay. Something about the way he said it, quiet, respectful, made me feel safe. Over the next few months, we started talking more. He'd check in on me, sometimes bringing me coffee or taking me out to lunch just to get me out of the office. At first, I thought it was just kindness, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't start looking forward to it. Ethan was nothing like Tyler. He was calm, thoughtful, and genuinely listened when I talked. One evening after a long day, we were the last two in the office. He asked if I wanted to grab dinner, since neither of us felt like cooking. That dinner changed everything. We talked for hours about work, life, love, and all the things we'd lost and learned. He told me he'd gone through a divorce years ago after his wife cheated, and that he understood how betrayal could hollow someone out. That night, I realized how much I'd been pretending to be fine. When he walked me to my car, I remember him hesitating, like he wanted to say something but didn't. I said, "You can say it." And he just smiled and said, "You deserve more than what you've been given." I went home crying. Not sad tears, but the kind that come when someone finally sees you after you've been invisible for too long. We didn't start dating right away. It was slow, careful. He respected my space, never pushed, and made it clear he wasn't trying to fix me. But over time, our connection deepened in ways that felt effortless. The first time he kissed me, it wasn't fireworks. It was quiet, certain, like something clicking into place that had always been meant to fit. The climax of it all came about a year later, when my ex tried to come back again. I just moved into a new apartment, started feeling genuinely happy again, and then Tyler showed up at my door unannounced. He told me he was sorry, that he'd been going to therapy, that he wanted another chance. He said he still loved me. For a moment, I froze, because the old me would have softened. But the woman standing there wasn't the same one who'd begged for his attention 2 years before. I told him calmly, "You loved the version of me that didn't know better. She's gone now." He just stood there, silent. I closed the door and didn't look back. That was the real moment I let go. Ethan and I have been together for over a year now, and it's the healthiest relationship I've ever known. He treats me like an equal, not a caretaker. He supports my ambitions, celebrates my wins, and makes me feel secure without me having to earn it. Last month, he asked me to move in with him, and I said yes. Sometimes I still think about the version of me that stayed with Tyler, how small and scared she felt, how desperate she was to be enough. And then I look at the life I have now, the peace, the laughter, the love that doesn't feel like walking on eggshells, and I realize losing him was the best thing that ever happened to me. If you told me years ago that the man who shattered my heart would lead me to someone who rebuilt my faith in love, I'd have laughed in your face. But that's how life works sometimes. The pain that nearly destroys you ends up being the thing that sets you free. And maybe, just maybe, that's what it means to finally find your dream. Not someone who completes you, but someone who reminds you you were already whole all along.